Hello, in this video I wanted to talk about UK knife laws and sort of how they're not very sensible. So this is going to be a video about theory versus fact of UK knife laws. Now, if you haven't read up all the legislation on the knife laws, I'd recommend you do it and look at how it's changing and things, this new proposed bill. But this isn't so much about that, it's about how there are things you should legally be allowed to carry, but you may or may not get arrested for it depending on what the arresting officer or policeman that comes into contact with you reacts to it. So what we're going to be basically looking at is selective application of the law, which in my opinion is very unjust. Now, so selective application of the law is basically, in theory, if you break a law but it's a very minor law, the prosecutor might let you off because they think it's not worth, the time prosecuting you. Nobody really wants to see a prosecution, something like that. So in theory it sounds great. It's like if somebody commits a very minor crime that's almost not a crime, you might get let off. That's the theory. However, the reality of selective application of the law generally means that somebody with a chip on their shoulder might have you arrested because they don't like you. Now, racial selective of the law sort of application is a very common thing, where sort of you might have a racist policeman or something like that who specifically target somebody because they're black, for example, or vice versa, where they don't want to seem racist, so if somebody who was black was committing a crime, they wouldn't prosecute them. So that's why I don't like selective application of the law. Everybody should be equal in the eyes of the law, basically. And you should also have, in my opinion, very obvious, not vague laws. So, are you breaking this law by doing this, yes or no? If no, then you should be completely fine. If yes, then you should be charged. Not where it's, maybe you're breaking a law, who knows, it depends on what the policeman's attitude is when they arrest you. Now, this should be obvious why this is a problem. So what in my pocket I've got is a selection of knives, some of which should be totally legal to carry on you in the UK at all times, assuming that you don't threaten anybody with them or do anything like that, because then it becomes another matter entirely, but just for carrying on you. Now, what I'm going to do is quickly explain as I get them out why or why not that should not be the case, but then to explain why it wouldn't always be the case. So let's get started. So what I have is the knife I bought from Weapon Collector recently. I can sometimes flip it with a easy movement there. So this is a Tangram locking knife, folding lock knife. I think it's called the Armadillo. Now it's under 3-inch blade, so if this was non-locking this would be UK legal, however it's locking. So I can't actually carry this on me, and here's the cinch, unless I have a reasonable excuse to do it. And this is what I really don't like, reasonable excuse, because what might be reasonable to me might not be reasonable to somebody else, and therefore maybe I'm going to get charged for carrying an illegal knife. So the reason I like this is a lock knife, it's safe, it can't close on your finger. Well, in theory it could if you broke the lock or something, but the point is, if I'm using a knife for something, I'd much rather use a lock knife. Now, when I do charity volunteering, this is the knife I now carry on me. The reason being, if I'm cutting open bags of hay or hay bales, things like that, I would much rather have a lock knife, and I don't give a shit now. I'm going to carry this knife on me when I'm doing something like that, because I know I've got a perfectly reasonable, valid excuse to have it. And as I'm going to explain in the video, you could have a knife that would be totally legal to carry on you at all times full stop and still be arrested and still face prosecution for it. So there we go. This knife would not be regularly UK legal because, as you can see, it's a lock knife. However, if this didn't have the lock in it, it would technically be fully UK legal. But that's something, as I said, we'll be covering. So next we have what is a UK legal knife. And this is another knife that's just under 3 inches blade, making it legal to carry because the UK law states if you have a folding knife that doesn't lock, that's under 3-inch blade, it's legal to carry. So there we go. So this one's just the Prometheus folding UK legal knife, they call it. This is actually a very good little pocket knife if you wanted one. I've spoken highly of this a few times, especially if you get it nice and sharp. However, this is totally UK legal because there's no lock on it. However, that means if I was using it for something and cutting at an awkward angle, I know you should never really get your hands in the way of a blade anyway, it can still close on you. Now, Weapon Collector did talk about some good UK legal knives where they've actually got a little bit of a mechanism there. So when your finger's there, although they're not lock knives, they can't close on your finger because your finger's, blocking the mechanism. So maybe they're worth looking into if you're interested in very legal knives that, can't close on your finger. But regardless, this knife would be UK legal because it's obviously a non-locking blade. So let's go on to the next knife now. Now we have an open L. Now, this isn't UK legal to carry it without reasonable excuse for 2 reasons that I'll go over if I unfold it. Firstly, the blade is over 3 inches, so that's one reason it's not legal. and it has a locking collar. So what you can do is you can twist that collar into locking position, and now it's a lock knife. Now the funny thing is with open owls is apparently lots of people who've been carrying them for reasons where they should have been charged have gotten away with it. The reason being open owls don't look scary. They look like classic pocket knives. They're a bit of wood with a knife handle, you know, a knife blade folds into. So this is again looking at the weird selective use of the law. If you're going to be carrying a knife that locks and is bigger than 3 inches, maybe you want to do it with an open owl just because it doesn't look scary. It's like having wood furniture on a gun, not scary black assault plastic on your rifle. It's ludicrous, but that's the law. So Swiss Army knife, a very popular thing, totally legal carry because the blades don't lock. So let's get out the main blade of the Swiss Army knife. That's just under 3 inches, and as you can see, it doesn't lock. However, as much as this should be completely legal to carry on you, there has been several news stories over the years where people who are totally innocent, not doing anything threatening with the knife, have been stopped by a police officer, they or their car have been searched, a Swiss Army knife has been found, then they've been arrested, dragged through the court system, had to pay a load of money only to be released. So again, selective application of the law, something that should be totally legal to have on you, especially if you're not doing anything threatening with it, or taking it anywhere where you're not allowed a knife. You know, selective application of the law, or you're under arrest for no reason. So Swiss Army knife should be totally legal unless the policeman takes a disliking to you, then it's not. So, Okay, now a legal open owl. This one does not have a locking collar on it. You can see it's riveted there, and it's a blade under 3 inches. This is an open owl carbon. Very good knife if you want just a very cheap pocket knife. Again, I'd actually reckon if you had either this or a Swiss Army knife on you, you know, this would do better than the Swiss Army knife in the sense that why both are UK legal, again, because this is an open owl and it's wooden, you know, looks like a little penny knife, you are not going to get in as much, you know, heat for it, if you like, because it looks boring and bland and like a granddad's knife. So, there's that. Okay, and then to finish off with, I've got a bigger lock knife. And the flip really didn't work there. There we go. So this is obviously illegal to carry on you unless you have a justifiable reason, again, because this is a much bigger blade than 3 inches and it locks. So, again, because here's the thing with the law, I don't know, because you'd think, wouldn't you, that if a blade was under 3 inches and locked, it wouldn't be as serious as carrying a blade on you bigger than 3 inches that locks, if you have a justifiable reason for both, but that's not how the law sees it. So, you're getting into this situation where, this is why I really hate this sort of law, where if you're going to carry a knife on you and you know you might get in trouble for it, why would you not then be carrying the biggest, you know, knife you could find? And I think this again goes down to sort of how out of touch some of the policing and sort of government policies are with why a lot of these sort of knife crimes happen, where if I was going to carry a knife on me to kill somebody, as said, kitchen knives are the weapon of choice simply because they're cheap, easy to get a hold of and disposable, and very sharp, and one's designed for cutting up meat. Who'd have thought cut up people fairly well. Generally not fancy pocket knives or fancy nice knives, because criminals don't want to spend a lot of money on something they're going to throw away after a murder or an assault with a weapon. So there you go, that's my video on practice versus reality and why I don't like selective application of the law. In my opinion, it should be that as long as you don't threaten anybody with a knife, you should be totally allowed to carry on you what you want, especially if I'm out in the woods. You know, what's the harm in me having a knife like this if I want to whittle some wood? Again, if a policeman came up, it would be, do I like you or not? Do I think you're telling the truth, even if that's what you state's the truth? So there you go. As said, I am not doing this video again, and I always state this to, you know, sort of have a go at police. I know there's a lot of genuinely good police out there that do their job and, you know, generally want to catch real criminals and not other people, but I really don't like the idea of selective application of the law simply because, you know, it should be a no-brainer why you should legally know what your rights are and what you can carry, and it should not be, I have something on me that's perfectly legal and I'm not going to do anything bad with it, but somebody might be called who doesn't, you know, doesn't take a liking to you, or for whatever other reason, your skin colour, you know, all that sort of stuff, why you might then get arrested or not arrested for it. So there you go. Selective application of the law, very bad thing in my opinion, and of course, as I was saying, you know, these are some of the knives you could or could not legally carry on you, you know, for everyday use without a justifiable excuse, and it's a bit interesting how, you know, like for example, both the Swiss Army knife and the little open owl are both legal to carry on you at all times, assuming you don't threaten anybody with them. But I bet if a policeman asked you to turn out your pockets and had a look at both of the knives, they'd be less likely to say something about the open owl than they would of the Swiss Army knife. But there you go. That's just sort of my opinions on it.